Good evening, everyone. Once again, we are meeting on the Research Methods lecture series, and we are having our 7th lecture. Today's lecture is on literature review in research. My name is Mr. Kato Alex Male. I'm a public health officer. And I'm a researcher. Let's continue right away. So, the following are the lecture objectives. 1, understand the purpose and importance of conducting a literature review. Identify different types of literature review. We are going to see them. Learn how to search for relevant sources using academic databases and resources. Evaluate the credibility and relevance of sources for inclusion in literature review. Understand the structure and organization of a literature review. Learn how to properly cite resources and avoid plagiarism in a literature review. To begin with the terms that are important in a literature review. A literature review is a critical analysis and synthesis of existing data and scholarly articles related to a particular topic or research question. If you remember very well, in our lectures, we began with the introductory part. We continue to look at the research design and other aspects of research, including sampling, and other aspects. And the literature review is also an aspect of research, and it is very important. And like we have said in the definition, it is the critical analysis and synthesis of existing research. You remember, we said that before doing any research, the initial step is identifying a problem, and then you're trying to organize a certain project that will help you that you try to obtain data on this problem, and you try to fill the gap, or you try to justify the problem. And literature review, it is now that process whereby you go on the internet, get sources which have some articles, which have some previous research about the problem you're going to research about, and you try to review these articles, and you try to see what others found out on the problem. We are going to see the importances of literature review. They are quite very many, and it is very, very significant. A research question, it is a clear, focused, and specific inquiry that guides the literature review process. We talked about the research question at the beginning of this module, and we saw how it is important. Remember, I'll give you very many multiple samples of research questions when we start research methods too. However, the research question will guide you on what to search about when it comes to literature. Are you going? Is your question about hypertension? Then in your literature, you will get all the articles about hypertension. A research gap. The research question defines the scope of the review and directs you to search on relevant sources. You will not start searching about HIV/AIDS, yet your problem is actually hypertension. So without a question, you might just search anything, whether significant or not. That's why it is important. Then a gap, it is that area in the existing literature where there is limited or no research available. Remember, as you come up with a problem, you try to do this literature review to identify a gap in literature, to try to add weight to your research project. You try to add significance to your research project. And in case you try to illustrate in your research design, how significant is your proposal? How is it going to fill this gap? And if the gap is not filled, what will happen to this country? What will happen to this world? So you're trying to justify how your research project is going to fill this gap in information. So a gap is also important in literature review, because when you the more you review literature, the more you identify what is missing in the available articles. And then another term is the synthesis. This involves combining information from multiple sources to develop a coherent and integrated understanding of a topic. Synthesis, you're trying to go deep into the articles that you're searching about, and then you're trying to come up with your information. and you're trying to also, okay, you come up with this information depending on the way you understood your research topic. Citations as a term, these are the references to other works cited within a research paper or literature review. Remember, every literature you have reviewed, you must cite, you must give it as a reference. You understand? You must give it as a reference such that other people who read about your work can also read about these articles to try to compare and try to check for the relevancy of your research. Then a meta-analysis as a term is a statistical technique used to combine the results of multiple studies on a particular topic to derive overall conclusions or effects or sizes. Meta-analysis, like that technique, okay, we use it in statistics, and you're trying to do this review on very many studies. You understand? You have one topic, hypertension. You have one topic, hygiene-related diseases, but you're trying to analyze various studies, various articles on that topic, and you try to come up with some statistical data. And such a technique is called a meta-analysis. A systematic review is a rigorous and transparent method for identifying, evaluating, and synthesizing all available evidence on a research question. That is the difference between a meta and a systematic review. Here, you're trying to identify and get all that evidence to support your research question. You're trying to come up with evidence to indicate that your research project is actually significant. Indeed, the questions are necessary to be researched about. Indeed, they must be answered. You understand? Still, you're trying to add weight to your research project. Then a bibliography, it is the list of sources cited in research paper or literature review. In other words, you're trying to give like those. Now, remember, we said citations. A citation is that reference. Now, the list of these citations is now the bibliography, the list of these sources where you obtained the data that you're reviewing as literature. Types of literature review. This is very important because whenever you're going to do a literature review, it depends on your research design. Your research design tells you the type of literature review that you're going to follow. We have quite a good number of types, and please don't worry, we are going to see one by one. And to start with, we have the narrative literature review. This is a descriptive and a subjective summary of the literature on a certain topic. You get it? You're trying to describe, you're trying to summarize the literature on that topic, but it is descriptive in a way that you try to go into details of that topic. You might not provide us with the numerical data from your literature that you have reviewed, but you're trying to describe for us the trends that they gave on this particular problem that you are investigating. This type of review provides a comprehensive overview of the existing literature on a topic without specific methodological approach. I guess you get it. It tries to define our point number one. In other words, like I told you, you'll not give us your statistical data. We might not need it, but you're trying to pick out how others described this condition that you are describing. So this type of review summarizes and synthesizes the findings from various studies to provide a broad understanding of the research area. You get it? Yeah. However, you're not putting each and everything from the particular studies that you have researched about. No, that you're reviewing. No, you're trying to give a summary of the description of information that each and every member or each and every researcher wrote in their articles about that particular problem that you are investigating. In other words, you're trying to add, like I told you, relevance to your research project. You get it? Good. Number two is the systematic literature review. So it is a structured and rigorous examination of the literature on a specific topic. You get it? A structured and rigorous examination. Now, you're trying to do some deep review of that particular topic in the literature that is available. So a systematic review follows a structured methodology to identify, evaluate, and synthesize all relevant research on that particular topic. So this type of review involves a systematic search of databases and the sources, followed by a rigorous analysis of the selected studies. I don't know whether you're trying to understand In a descriptive, you, the researcher who is conducting your project, you were trying in descriptive, you were trying to give what others were talking about that particular problem. You get it? But you're trying to summarize from each and every paper, from each and every article that exists about that problem. But in a systematic review, you not only describe, but you still go deep and analyze what each and every one found out on that particular problem. You understand? You're trying to analyze the trends. You get it? You're trying to analyze the risk factors for that condition associated with that condition. You're trying to analyze prevalences, previous prevalences. You understand? Yeah, so that's what you do in a systematic review. You don't only describe, but also give an analysis depending on the previous studies on that particular problem. Then a meta-analysis review, which is also a type of review. This combines data from multiple independent studies and uses statistical methods to analyze the data and derive overall conclusions. A meta-analysis is a quantitative synthesis of data from multiple studies to provide a more precise estimate of the size or outcome of interest. It involves statistical techniques to combine and analyze the results from individual studies. In other words, in a descriptive, you were not minding about any statistics. You were just giving us what others were talking about the problem. In the systematic review, you were trying to go deep to describe and analyze what others said about that problem. In a meta-analysis, you go statistically. You understand? You do a statistical, it is like a statistical review. You get it? Eh? Yes, you're trying to get the statistics available on this particular problem and then proceed to analyzing. Here, it is the statistical followed by analysis. In a systematic, descriptive followed by analysis. Then in a descriptive, there's no anything to do with analyzing. I guess you get the difference, and you can easily select now what can work best for your the review that can work best for your research methodology. Then other types of literature review, we have the scoping review. This aims to map the existing literature on a broad topic area to identify key concepts, theories, and gaps in knowledge. It provides an overview of the available evidence without necessarily synthesizing or evaluating in depth, or evaluating the problem in depth. So here you're trying to identify the concepts, theories, and then gaps that are available. You understand? Eh? Yeah. In other words, you're trying to provide evidence. Now, in a scoping review, you have identified this gap. You understand? Eh? And now you proceed to giving an evidence that from this there is no available data talking about such and such a problem in such and such a manner. So you're trying to identify that gap and you try to defend it. You understand? Eh? Yeah. And then a critical literature review, it goes beyond summarizing existing literature by evaluating the strengths and weaknesses of individual studies. I guess this one are biases and limitations, and offering insights into the overall quality of the research in a particular field. In other words, here, he will go and do a literature review, but he will not only just review or talk about what others said, but he will continue to say that such and such a study was biased in such and such category. It considered the participants of mostly 50 years and above, yet in detail, yet the topic says among adults. Adults constitutionally were not 18 years and above, but this such and such data that is available is only for those ones who are, yes, it indicates adults, that's 18 years and above, but the results were mostly considering participants of 50 and above. Such a study is a biased study. Therefore, you as the current researcher, you're trying to say that I'm going to do this research. However, there wouldn't be a gap in knowledge. However, the knowledge available is biased. You understand what I'm saying? It is biased in such and such a category. Therefore, my research is really necessary. You understand? But here, you need a deep insight into that data that you're talking about. And after performing a critical review, you must proceed to performing a scoping review and give evidence that indeed such and such a study was biased in such and such a category. That's now a critical review. Or you might not consider the weaknesses, but you can consider the strengths of your study over those available studies. I guess you get it. As far as weaknesses are concerned, you were considering weaknesses of those studies. You understand? But if you don't look at weaknesses, you might look at your strengths and say that, yes, the studies available are talking about chronic diseases. However, they were limited to hypertension and asthma. You understand? They were limited to only 2 chronic diseases, and it might not be a weakness for them, but you can give a strength of your study in a way that my study is going to consider a broad spectrum of non-communicable diseases. So here, I'm not trying to weaken the available data, but I'm trying to provide a strength that my study is going to hold over the available studies. I guess you get what a critical literature review is concerned. If I try to review these 5 types of reviews, if I try to go back, you find out that each one is essential in its category. Narrative was essential in a way that you need to, it was describing what others say on the available data. You find out that is important. Systematically, you need to not only describe, but also analyze what others were saying on the problem under investigation. Then meta-analysis, whereby you go statistically. You get the statistics. Here, you're not just describing, but you're also telling us that the previous prevalence of malaria in northern Uganda was 26%, but in southern part of South Sudan, it was 25%. That is now the meta-analysis. You're trying to go statistics. You get it? When it comes to the scoping review, you're trying to identify the gap and then proceed to giving an evidence. You find out that most of the methods that we have listed would need an evidence on what you're saying. A critical review, this one will continue to tell you that my research project is really necessary. How? Such and such existing data has such and such a weakness. You get it? Also, my study has such and such a strength. You can get the importance of each. When we get the sources of data, we have Google Scholars and Mendeley Referencing Manager and very many other sources. I gave out to these two because they are very easy to use. Mendeley Referencing Manager can be obtained from www.mendeley.com. If you type that like that, you will go to that website direct. Or you can also just type in Mendeley Referencing Manager, and then as it brings Mendeley, you try to type in. You get it? You try to type in your referencing. I think by the end of this lecture, I'm going to show you how you can search for data from these two sources. Yeah, I'm going to do that, and by God's grace, I will not forget. Then we go to the steps to search for data, the steps that you would follow when searching for your data. Number 1, define your research topic. This requires you to clearly define your research topic or question to narrow down your search. You must know the problem under investigation, and that's what you're going to consider as a keyword when searching for this data. I'm going to show you how you can better do that. Then to narrow down your search and focus on specific keywords, I've told you that. Then the second step is choose the right academic databases. Here it wants you to select an appropriate database based on your subject area or discipline. Do not go on data available in the medicine and surgery field, yet you are in the public health field. You understand? Yeah. So here you need some popular academic databases, for example, PubMed. This is very essential. I'm going to show you how you can get information from PubMed, Web of Science, Google Scholar. I've listed these sources in the previous slide. Then number 3, use the keywords and Boolean operators. This wants you to use relevant keywords related to your topic. I've talked about this, and combine them with Boolean operators, for example, and, or, not. You get it? This helps you to refine your search results. It becomes easy for the data you're searching for to only bring out only the essential articles that you wanted to read about. Then the next step, step 4, refine your search results. Here, it wants you to utilize advanced search options provided by academic databases to filter results by publication date, document type, author, or other criteria. Now here, this is very important when it comes to citing, when it comes to writing your references. I talked about this in the previous slides, citation. Yeah, so you need to look at the publication date, the type of the document, and any other way that you can try to filter your results. Perhaps you might be knowing a certain author. We're going to see how you can also search by any author. You might be knowing a certain author, and you just type in his or her name and you provide the data, and they provide you articles that the author has written. You get it? Yeah. And then step 5, review abstracts and keywords. Yeah. Here they want you to evaluate the abstracts, keywords. We are going to see abstracts when it comes to research methods too. They want you to evaluate the abstracts, keywords, and the subject headings of the sources to determine their relevance to your research question. Yeah, I guess that one is clear. Yeah, an abstract is like a summary of the whole document. You might not be wanting to read the whole document, but at least try to first read it through the abstract before you continue to reading the whole document. This abstract will give you an insight of what is in the whole article, and it will enable you to know whether the article is really relevant to continue reading about or irrelevant. Then the other step is check citations and references. This step wants you to look at the citations, we have talked about them, and references of the sources that you find relevant, because these ones can add value, can be additional variable resources on the same topic. In other words, someone who will be reading your work, after also reading through your references, they will see really the significance of your research. I guess that one is also clear. And the 7th step is consult subject-specific journals. Yeah, well, for example, this one wants you to explore subject-specific journals in your field. I think I've been talking about this all along, because they can contain the latest research findings. This one wants you to do your search on literature review in your particular field. You get it? In your particular field. The 8th step, utilize interlibrary loan services, whereby if you cannot access a particular source, consider using interlibrary loan services provided by academic libraries to obtain the required material. For example, there are some online libraries whereby if you continue to search for your data, the library will tell you, will require some payment that they want you to pay. Yet you really want to read about that article. So you can use some loan services that way to access the data you want. Then the other step, keep track of your sources. This one wants you to maintain a record of all the sources that you consult during your research process to properly cite them in your work. In other words, each resource that you try to read about, and most especially you find relevant, try to record it somewhere so that you can keep tracking. Tracking helps you not to reread articles that you read already, and also you will not be required to look through to re-get the references again. You already have the tracked record of your references. Good. Then the 10th step, evaluate the source of credibility. I think I've been talking about credibility all along. This one is important for your work to be valid and reliable. In other words, also not only your work, but also the work of the sources that you're using. In other words, assess the credibility and reliability of the sources that you're good at. The sources, we mean the articles that are providing you data for literature review. So consider their credibility and reliability by considering factors, for example, the credentials of the authors, the publication venue, the peer review process, and relevance of your research topic. There are some data that were not really relevant or significant to be uploaded or to be published. You understand? But because someone used some irregular steps, they found their work published, and for you trying to read from that work. Usually the most trusted place is PubMed to get information that is good for literature review. Then the structuring and organization of a literature review. How do you organize your literature review? That's what we are looking about. Number one is introduction. The literature review begins with an introduction that provides an overview of the topic that is being investigated. So you try to just give an introduction. We shall get samples when we reach research methods 2. I told you that will be the practical part of research methods module. Yeah, I'll be trying to show you some of these things and how you can do them. So for that case, please, you shouldn't be worried. It should be clear. It should be clearly defined. I should clearly define the research question or problem that the review aims to address and explain the significance of the topic. This is done under the introductory part of your literature review. Then scope of the review. This is the next section that outlines the scope of the review by specifying the criteria for including or excluding studies. This helps to establish boundaries of the review and ensures that only relevant sources are considered. I guess this one is clear. The scope tries to indicate for us the limits within which the review is running. You're trying to get limits that I'm going to only consider prevalences and risk factors for hypertension, much as there are also other factors that can be considered. Yeah, but as far as the scope of my study, I'm only going to consider prevalence and the associated risky factors. Then the third step, that is the search strategy. The literature review should describe the search strategy used to identify relevant sources. How did you come about relevant sources? How did you arrive at such a study that this one is relevant and therefore can be included in your study? This includes detailing the databases, search terms, and the inclusion criteria employed to select studies for inclusion in the review. And then the other step is the synthesis of literature. That is the main body now. Yeah, the main body of the review. You synthesize and it synthesizes and analyzes the findings from the selected sources. Yeah, since you're trying to get the data and then you build up your literature review. So it might be organized thematically, chronologically, that is in a step-by-step way, or methodologically by methods, depending on the nature of the research question. That's why at the beginning I told you research question is very important when it comes to when you start reviewing literature. The fifth step is critical evaluation. Here, the literature is critically evaluated based on factors, for example, method. Now you're trying to evaluate your work. Yeah. Framework, findings, and limitations. Yeah. This helps to assess the quality and reliability of the sources that you used. You understand? Yeah, we have seen one of the crucial steps is considering the credibility and reliability of your sources. Yeah. Then the last step is identification of the gap. Yeah. So the literature review should identify gaps in the existing research that warrant further investigation. This means that you're trying to indicate that indeed my study is necessary. You get it? Yeah, so use the literature review section to identify the gaps. This involves highlighting areas where conflicting findings exist or where limited research has been conducted. I think I talked about the gaps very, very well. Then conclusion. Here you're trying to summarize the key findings of the literature review and discuss their implications for future research. It may also suggest avenues for future studies based on the gaps identifying in the existing literature. That's why the section for gap indication is really, really very paramount. Then the final part of the review are the references. Yeah, a list of references cited in literature review should be provided in a consistent citation style. There are very many styles still under research methods too. We shall see all these referencing styles. upper, MLA, and others. This allows readers to locate and verify the sources that you consulted. These referencing styles are very crucial because once you just click on that reference, it will take you directly to the article being considered. I guess that one is clear. Then citation of sources. I think this is the last part that we are considering. Yeah, you must cite your sources. Here, whenever you use information or ideas from a source, make sure you cite them properly. Any text or a corresponding reference list. Yeah, what we mean by any text here, you're trying to put a reference immediately at that very immediately after writing about that concept. You get it? Or you can put all your references at the last page, for example. Yeah, don't worry, we shall see how well we can do this. How you can put your reference immediate after the text or at the end to just gather your given references. Use quotation marks when directly quoting a source. Always use quotation marks. Yeah, to indicate that the words are not your own words. You understand? Yeah, so use quotation marks to indicate that the words are not your own words, but also as you give a reference there. Additionally, provide an in-text citation of the author's name, publication year, and page number. We shall see how we can do this. Then paraphrase correctly, meaning if you are paraphrasing information from a source, make sure to rephrase it in your own words. Yeah, even when paraphrasing, you still need to provide an in-text citation to acknowledge the original source. In the previous, we said use quotation marks. That one was important when you're saying someone's words directly. Quote them and then indicate their names there. Or if you're just paraphrasing, meaning you're not using the way they wrote in their articles, but you're trying to give an interpretation of the way they wrote. Yeah, still there, we are saying that you need to provide an in-text citation. We shall see how we can do this practically. Then a reference list, we talked about this as the last page of literature review, whereby you need the references that you tried to review. This reference list, the reference list contains the citations of the literature or the articles that you visited. Lastly, check for plagiarism. This means that before submitting your literature review, use plagiarism detection software to ensure that your work is free of any unacknowledged sources. Yeah, make sure that all broad ideas and information are properly cited. This means that ensure that you have first of all you have cited all the work, all the articles that you visited, and also they are reliable and have the correct data. You understand? Also, ensure that you didn't just copy from someone's existing literature review. You must indicate that you read the work by your own, you viewed the literature by your own, and then you wrote it down that literature review. I'm a bit limited by Zoom, so I cannot go beyond the 40 minutes. But however, I had promised to show you how we can search for information from Mendeley and Google Scholars. But please don't worry, we shall see all how these ones are done when it comes to the practical aspect of research methods. That is the module 2 of this module. I beg to, my lecture stops here. I guess you have learned how to do literature review and the requirements for a literature review. I urge you to continue on your work. I urge you to continue on your work. I guess very many of us started on our work. And also, please be serious when doing your research work. We are all healthy professionals. We are all healthy professionals. Identify a problem and then move with the steps the way we moved with them from the beginning of this module. I beg to stop here. The following have been our lecture objectives. Try to review them and try to see the areas that you didn't understand well. Try to go back in this video to review those areas that you didn't understand well. These are our lecture objectives, and what we have been learning about is literature review in research. Once again, my name is Kato Alex Male. a public health officer, and a researcher. Have a good night and a nice time. Thank you.